Hi, everybody, and it's great to be with you all, and thanks for joining us today. Okay, we're going to be talking for this next little bit about targeting your materials and your target audience. So we know that you are all really busy, that you're all going nonstop. So that's why we call this workshop Getting Done with Less Work, because we want to be able to help you with that. Our goal today is to share some of the off-the-shelf products and accessible programs that can help you disseminate two or three to your stakeholders.
You're breaking up a little,
So let's
Lenora.
start out with who is, thank you. I'm trying to stick close here, but keep me posted on that.
Okay.
Let's start out with who is your target audience. Is that a little better?
Yep.
Okay, you're going to see me hunched over my screen because that's where my mic is, so bear with me. Before we discuss and demo the products that we want to share with you, let's take a step back and think about the audience that you want to use the materials with. And then we want to challenge you to use and adapt the products and programs we share today for your target audience. As we said, we want to make it easier for you to disseminate your findings to stakeholders. However, stakeholders is a large group and a diverse group of people. And so if we don't, or you don't hone in on your target audience and your message, you may find that your message is not understood and or acted by anyone. And then because we're all so busy, we've wasted our time. So we really want to make sure we think about target audience. So what is a target audience? Here's a simple definition we can use for the next 2 days. It's the intended group or audience or readership of your publication, policy change, your request, or other message. And when you think about it, we've all been targeting our audience for years. Think about when you were growing up. At least for me, I know this. I knew that I could target whatever parent I needed to go to for what I wanted. So I knew it was best to go to my mom for certain things, and for other things, I could go for my dad. So I was been targeting for since I was young, and I think many of you have also. Now, if you have kids, you've probably both been exhilarated and frustrated by this targeting. Maybe exhilarated that your child is learning these cognitive skills, but really frustrated that they're using them on you. So remember, we've all been using target audience for a long time. Another thing to think about target audience is their attributes. So look at this, a group of people with similar attributes. That could be an occupation, it could be a goal, it could be their education level, just something about them that is interested or needs the information or products that you have. What is this information on EMS 02 and what products do we have about it that can help make change in your community? So let's think about some attributes that we might want to reach for EMS performance measures 2 and 3. So let's think about occupation. Well, a lot of times for EMS 02 and 3, we talk about agency directors, EMS agency directors. That's who we send our survey to, and that's who we hope will take this information and work with us and make change within which will roll up to within our state. But maybe you have a different project going on and you want to reach just the pediatric care coordinators in your state. And yes, they're EMS, and maybe some of them are an agency director, but the pediatric care coordinator could be just a little different. They might have a bigger focus on pediatrics than the agency director, although they might share the same education level. What about education level? Perhaps you have a program where you want to reach all EMT basics in your state or in a region. You might target them differently than if you were reaching paramedics. And what about a goal? What might be some similar goals to think about? Well, maybe you as state managers, your goal is to reach 80% response rate on the next EMSC survey, and perhaps NEDARC and others can help you with that. So when you think about that, think about attributes of your target audience. So really, it comes down to knowing both your message and the audience. We want to connect by getting the information that we have, whether it's about a new product, something else, or maybe you want to take an agency and compare it and connect it with another agency because one has a PEC and one doesn't. So you have some kind of information or request that you have, and you want to be sure you want to get it to the people who can use the information. So let's think about the information that we have. Let's go back a few years to 2017, maybe a little bit earlier, but about that time. That was when the EMSC program implemented 3 new EMS performance measures. I looked over the list of participants today, and it seems to me that there's probably about a third of you who have joined us that were managers when the program rolled out what is known as the new measures. Sometimes we call them the EMS measures, and occasionally we call them the next generation of measures. Mostly today, I'll be using the word EMS measures or new measures. Now for the new folks, you might want to realize or know that after about 10 years of working with EMS related measures that were related to pediatric medical director and a few other items, the EMS program wanted to be sure that the measures in each state
You're breaking up
we
a
were
bit.
working on were relevant. So we went through a process. Thank you, keep reminding me. So we went through a process to come up with some new measures that are listed here. The process for developing the measures was an extensive one over 3 years. So prior to 2017, many of us were working on these measures. It involved doing research, conducting interviews, input from many subject matter experts, including managers, an advisory committee that was composed of various stakeholders and from professional organizations. And again, we also had state partnership managers on that.
Lenora, I just wanted to really quick put in the chat box,
Yeah.
Corolla just mentioned that reaching out to volunteer providers and lifting up PM3 is challenging. So I just wanted to add that comment she put in too.
Great, thank you. I'm glad that you brought that up, and I didn't think about the volunteer, and I think that's an important group to keep in mind. And again, they may be different from other EMS providers in your state. Thanks for that comment. Once the measures were developed, NEDARC was tasked by the EMSC program to develop a manual for all 9 program measures. So we were given the purpose of the manual, which you see on the right-hand side, and that was to describe and define key components of each performance measure. We had some of that data from the previous research we had done, establish benchmarks to measure progress along the way, and mostly our federal officers at HRSA established those, but we will also work with them and with other managers to talk about what might be realistic. We wanted to provide target objectives for each measure and provide resources for each of the performance measures. So here's the manual, a picture of the front cover on the left. Take a moment and think about this and use the chat box and type in who was the target audience or who was the audience we were targeting when we were making this measure.
You mean the manual when we were making the manual?
Thank you, Patty. Measure, manual, performance measure. Yes. So take a moment, and when you're ready, type in the chat box, thinking about this manual, who was the audience we were targeting it to?
We have a lot of different responses coming in the chat box. There's the EMSC managers, state partnership managers, EMSC agencies, program managers,
okay, keep going.
Advisory committee members. There's a lot of different answers coming in.
Great, I'm writing them down because I can't see the chat box as a presenter. Anything else, Liz?
Let's see. We have EDs. Joe Stack added that us, everyone on this call, it's used for them.
Okay. Wow, this has been great.
Renee added fan.
Great. All right. Liz, if anything else comes up, let me know, but it sounds like there's a period of quiet in the chat box right now. Liz, it's kind of quiet in the chat box right now.
Yep, it's, yes.
Oh,
yep,
she froze up.
Slowed down.
All right, thanks you guys. I heard EMS agency directors, managers, program managers, advisory committee, perhaps folks working in the ED, FAN, and us. So let's see what we found. Well, typical NEDARC, we wanted to practice what we preached. So we went through and thought about this, knowing that that the program had provided us with what the purpose of the manual was. We did spend some time brainstorming a list, and looks like it's quite a few of the same folks you did. And then we also, on the right, thought about partner organizations that might be the audience for the manual. So what did we finally decide after looking through this list, talking to folks and clarifying? Well, yes, just like you guys said, the clear winner was the EMSC State Partnership Managers. And why we felt some of these other audiences that we talked about were important, we wanted to be sure that the manual was made. That's what we work on. So we needed to get to know you better. Not that we didn't already know you. We've always thought about you guys as our target audience, and we love working with you. But now we wanted to be a little more systematic about this. So what we really wanted to do was to paint a picture about you. So if any time between about 2014 and 2017, you felt like your ears were burning a lot, that's because we were talking about you guys. And this is stuff that we needed to know. We needed to know about your knowledge and think about what you knew, your attitudes and behaviors regarding the measures. So what did we come up with at first? Well, we figured that managers have plenty of work. You are very busy. So that was important to us to know. Perhaps some of you, maybe not all, may not be convinced that the EMSC measures or the EMS measures are important. Or you may worry that not meeting the measures will impact future funding. So while that might be true, this is what we thought about. But we did know that you're knowledgeable about the system in your state. So we didn't have to worry about too much about that information because you guys knew that. So what we wanted to do to help with some of these things was to think about this. If you felt and perhaps the measures weren't important or that other people in your state might feel that, we started the manual with a really nice letter from both Beth Edgerton and Teresa and T. Morrison Kinata. So they're telling folks and they're telling you that this is important. We've taken the time to work on this. We know that you're busy and that you're doing a lot of different things. And so we wanted a manual that was easy for you to navigate and for us to navigate too, actually, and that you could skim and find things easily that you needed them. So the table of contents is large, the page numbers are large. You can go through and see right away where things are and get your fingers on them. We knew that perhaps you might want to be able to look at the performance measures in a hurry or share them with someone. So we have a page of all 9 performance measures, and each of these has the targets for each year. So by 2020, 2023, and 2026. So although you might feel worried about meeting the targets, you could see that they're incremental. We don't expect people to get somewhere all at once, especially for new measures. So those are some of the things that we did for the manual based on what we thought about with you. And then if you are worried that if your program doesn't meet the measure, you won't get funded, here's the program contacts. They're right here. So this shows the importance of the program to everyone because here's the contacts, here's how you get in touch with them. So those are some of the things we did for when we thought about our target audience. But we needed to continue painting. That was a good start. But we wanted to consider what barriers might keep you from being able to work on the measures and perhaps how the manual can help with that. So here's some possibilities that we brainstormed. We thought you might feel that you can't affect change in your state. You might feel the measures are outside the scope of your program, or you might feel there's not enough evidence to support the new measures. So we thought about that with the manual, and here's some things we tried to do that might help with that. Because we also, again, know you're busy and we want you to be able to skim and find things easily and share, each of the chapters is the same layout. So for example, here's PM03, the use of pediatric specific equipment. When you had the manual open, on the left was always a picture that could be related to what we're talking about. And this was also a picture that you could take and use if you wanted in different presentations. So again, we know that you have tough barriers and a manual can't solve them all, but these are some of the things we did to help. We knew that you wanted data. So we start with the significance of the measure. We continue here with other things that we found about in this case, '03, and we always had references listed for you. So you can see in the bottom of here, there's some references and others to help you with the data and to feel that there is evidence to support these. So that's how we try to do that, make your life a little easier. And then if you wondered if it was part of the scope, this is a picture in Connecticut of an all-day pediatric specific skill building exercise. So again, you can see someone in one of the states you work in or one of your colleagues, this was important to them, must be or possibly in part of the scope because of having this picture. So again, we tried to work on all of those things to see if that could help you. And then we continued painting our picture. Barriers are important, but what about benefits? What might help you guys support the measure? Well, again, you might be able to support the measure if there was improved data quality and there was a unified message to the EMSC community about the importance of each measure. So again, this is a little hard. We can't, like I said, fix all of this with the manual, but we wanted, again, some stuff at your fingertips and for you to feel confidence in the measures. So one thing we did at the end of the manual is that there is what's called a detailed sheet. And we have one for every measure, and they're each about 2 to 3 pages. So again, on the left, you can see we list all of the performance measures. You can see right away which ones are new, which ones are unchanged, which ones have been updated. And we included the detailed sheet because this is the information that's important to HRSA. Our EMS program manager, federal officers take this data and they take these sheets and they turn them into sort of the higher ups within HRSA, and they say, we're behind this. This is our unified message about what's important for EMSC. So we also hope that you would be able to browse these. You might not necessarily want to make screenshots and use these, but again, you might, depending on your audience, but there is a lot of information here for you to see what went behind the measure and to feel confident that a lot of time and effort went in to make these measures and that they're important to the program and that you would have a unified message when you reach out to folks. We wanted to continue painting and we wanted to look at one more area. What are some things that would influence your work, make it easier or harder to get your job done? So we thought, well, your EMSC state leadership probably is an important audience or someone who can influence you. Many of you are located in state EMS offices. So again, that would be important. You have grant requirements. And so again, even though the measures are an important part of the grant requirements, there's always things that you need to do to meet the requirements. And everyone has a political climate in their state. We know that if you've seen one EMS system, that's what you've seen is one EMS system, and that everything is very different in each state. So again, these are hard things. We're not going to solve them with a manual, but we could give you some tools. So one thing we did was that at the beginning on the first page, when you opened up the manual and you got to the first or any of the measures, on the right-hand side was the beginning like this. And you could take and do clip art and make this large. So right away, you can go and talk to people if you want about the different measures. So we just thought that might be something that you could do right away. This could go into a slide. It could go into a flyer. It could go into a social media post. So there's stuff at your fingertips right away. And we wanted to think about what makes information credible to you because you are our target audience and we want you to feel like you have credible information to share with stakeholders. So we figured that it probably is important. It's evidence-based. That's something that you guys ask us about a lot and we know that that's important. And that this was reached by consensus from a group of experts. Again, it shows the importance to the country. It could be part of a unified message, and it shows that it's part of the scope of the work that we're doing. And that when it's presented by an experienced peer, that can often make a difference for how we look at our information. So what we did in the manual in the beginning was we did an introduction to it. That provides background, it provides history, and it also provides some data to show you where we've been and where we need to go. Again, credible, evidence-based information that's available to you. How did we develop these measures? The process for developing? Peers, that came from experts. This was not just pulled out of a hat. It took time to do it. So we wanted to make sure you knew that. And then again, peers. Here's a picture of in Alaska. No, this is Virginia. Sorry, we have so many pictures in there. But again, this shows you how people who were part of the EMSC program, your peers, received an award for the work they did, showing the importance of it and what it means to others in the program. So again, we had those throughout to give you examples and ideas and stories that you could share with stakeholders. Sometimes data is really great, evidence-based data is great, and stories with pictures. So you have a whole gamut depending on the audience and the message of what you need to do with the measures. So I hope you feel that in summary, we used a process to target our audience. We felt for something as big and long lasting as the performance measure, we wanted to take a little bit more time and have a process that would help us. Now, each time you go to find a new target audience, you might not need to use that process, but we want to challenge and encourage you to always think and take time to think about your audience. So again, we really hope that you do that. And so just remember, please, we want you to feel excited about the information we're going to share today and the programs we're going to share with you and the products. And again, look at them. We might have developed them with a certain idea of a group in mind, but you know how the best to use it. You know your state best, and you know how to modify. So we challenge you always to think about the target audience and message and use a process, whether it's shorter than the one we used, but use a process to think through your message and your audience as you use the products that we're going to share and demonstrate the next 2 days. Speaking of those products and programs, here's what we'll be working on for the next few days. So on the left, you can see the products, a PowerPoint slide deck, some postcard templates. Remember, we asked you guys what you wanted to work on. And so again, we targeted this workshop towards you and what you told us you wanted. If you look on the right, you can see examples of stakeholder groups that we had in mind when we made these. Again, you'll have to take a look at them and see if it fits what you think for your state and what you need. You may notice that about 3 of the 7 are geared toward EMS agency directors. Again, not surprising, we're talking a lot about performance measure 2 and 3. That's our target audience. So thinking about EMS agency directors in your state, take a minute, please, and write down some attributes of EMS agency directors in your state. After a minute, Liz will open up the chat box and we'll take a look at what you have for attributes. I'm going to put my timer on as well. It's been suggested if I turn off my camera, it might help with the audio. So I'm going to do that for the next few minutes. Well, I can't figure out how to do that. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, it's been about a minute. Yeah, Mike, is there something else?
No, that was it. I think that might help. Just the audio sometimes cuts out a little bit. That will probably help.
Thank you. All right, Liz, is the chat box open?
Yes, it is. So a few comments coming in. Jane Ostler commented they're busy. Autumn said they're passionate. Samantha said they're overworked. Catherine said they wear multiple hats. Victoria, underfunded. Cranberry said they advocate for their budgets. Eddie agreed with Catherine regarding that they're wearing multiple hats. Amy commented that they're overwhelmed with competing interests and needs. Mark commented they're busy. If it's not on fire, less interest. Carolina said hers is awesome. Amy commented that they're passionate about EMS. Corolla said Midwestern work ethics, get it done. Sam Harrison, volunteer. It's their second job, also training officers, multiple hats, very busy. Renee commented overwhelmed, underfunded, resilient, hardworking. Corolla said not a matter of pay, doing the right thing for the people in their community. Joe Stack commented not always interested in devoting resources to pediatric care. Erica, dedicated, busy, underfunded, stressed, overwhelmed by COVID. Let's see. GT Edwards commented that they're connected, committed, interested, and poised to benefit. And Samantha commented back at Corolla that said, get it done, amen, go Midwest mindset.
Wow, what a list. You guys, wow. Anything else still coming in, Liz?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, wow. So let's think about this. We heard a lot of busy, right? We heard a lot of overworked and overwhelmed. Okay, that looks this. We heard some underfunded. That's really hard too. We heard think about volunteer. And the many hats probably also relates to being overwhelmed, busy, right? But I thought the really great things too were the advocate, the passion, that they're connected and committed, and many are devoted to pediatric care, although some also we heard maybe don't care as much about pediatric care. So, okay, so we know some things. We know busy, overwhelmed, but passionate. What are some ways we could make material or get a message to them that would fit them, that would help with these issues that we just talked about? What are some things that you think we could do? And you can use the phone or you can use the chat box. What are some ways that we could make it easier and fitting for them to get the information we have about PM 2 and 3, knowing these attributes?
Corolla comments in the chat box that pediatric care scares most providers. It's not that they don't care. It's just a little bit scary, right?
Scares most providers. Yes, we know they see less than probably 10 patients a month, and even less in many areas. So again, they're scared. That's another thing. They might feel scared. When you're scared of something, sometimes you don't really rush in to try to fix it because it's a little hard to do. So that's something else to consider. So how could we make material for them? What's ways we could reach them knowing this?
So there are a few other comments coming through the chat. Samantha says, quick read, short and sweet, to the point, do not overwhelm with huge amounts of text. And
Okay.
Amy adds, inform them how meeting these PM can benefit their patients and make their jobs easier.
Okay.
Autumn,
Go ahead.
yeah, sorry. Autumn adds that material that is quick and easy to access, and Erica adds on that just the facts with materials with just the facts.
Okay, so inform them about how we can help them, or the program can help them improve pediatric care, but make it a quick read, short, speeding, something at their fingertips, something that they can easily see and take a look at, and perhaps they can share with other providers in their agency.
Samantha also comments that hearing from peers about personal experience with pediatric readiness.
So the peer-to-peer, that's credible to many people. That's a great idea.
Renee also adds that a one-pager quick reference sheet that's a visual sent out to everyone.
One-pager quick reference, visuals sent out, great. Yeah, those are definitely the things we want to think about. You know, if we're going to maybe go up to the higher ups at HRSA, we probably want a different way of looking at it. We might want something that has maybe a little bit more information. But when we're trying to reach these agency directors that we have just did a quick brainstorm about in their attributes, it sounds to me like you guys are you're hitting the nail right on the head with what's needed.
Autumn also suggests that the material to be available on the go and easy to access on the phone. And Victoria suggests that low-cost programming options would be another way.
Great. Those are things that we really want to think about. And those are directed toward those agency directors in our state. Those are things that they want to hear and they need. And that's perhaps different than your state EMS medical director or your state EMS director. Again, you want to think about the audience and how we can reach them. We have great information. We know a lot about what's going on in the state due to the survey, and how can we make a difference? So these are really, really great ideas. I really like them.
And I just want to add one more that Samantha added was links for when they have time later. So if they don't have time right now, but to look at it later.
Another good idea. So I think you guys are,
5 minutes.
Thanks, Braden. I think you guys are hitting it right on the head. And I think we want to keep the agency directors and other stakeholders in mind as we go forward. And as we demo this different work and that you work along with us and you see some of these products, please always be thinking, how can I make it for the audience I need? Or how can I use this for this message I have been thinking about? I have one more, I can't move forward for some reason. Okay. I have one more question I want you to think about. What one question do you still have about target audiences? I'd like you to review your notes or think back on our last half-hour discussion and think about your question for 1 minute. After that, we'll open up the chat box again, and you can ask your question via the chat box. So 1 minute, I got my timer on. What one question do you still have about target audience? Liz, is the chat box open?
It is. So we have a few questions coming in. To start off with, Amanda says, how do you create one resource that is relevant to volunteer, municipalities, government, and private, not to mention firefighters? Rachel Ford asks,
Wait, let's start with Amanda. Amanda, if you're also on the phone, can we clarify? Can you say that again, Liz? Sorry.
how do you create one resource that is relevant to volunteer, municipalities or governments, and private, not to mention the firefighters?
So I'm not familiar as much with some of those groups that you mentioned, Amanda, and others on the ideas for you. I think sometimes when you start out thinking, how can I develop one, and then you give several types of audiences, it might not work. You might be getting too big a target. Although you might want to sit down and really think about what attributes do they share, and is that the message? Do they all need the same message? And if you can do that, then you're ready to create one document, one message for that group. And that's one thing I can think of right away about that. Anyone else have suggestions?
Lenora, I think that's a good idea. Just trying to think about what the commonalities is the first thing, commonalities that they have, because that could be in one way, a very simple message, targeted message if there's commonalities between the groups, but then there might need to be separate messages, of course, for the different needs of the groups as well.
I think we're close to time, but is there one more message? And I can also look in the chat box after the break and answer any questions, but can you just read out the other questions, Liz?
Yes, there's a couple more questions, and a few of them all kind of go into engaging with them and how is the best way to reaching out to the target audiences. And Samantha asks, what has worked with other EMSC managers to engage with agencies, not only to participate in our survey, but also to begin to advocate for improved pediatric readiness.
Okay. And we could all respond back to that in the chat box also, but I'll take a quick look at that. And what else, Liz?
Rachel Ford asked, what is their preferred means of communication? Brianne Glenn asked, how do we engage them? And then GT Edwards asked, what is the best platform for reaching my target audience? So along the same lines of those same questions of engagement and communication.
Right. And so there might not be a best platform for the target audience. And sometimes we have to balance. We know a lot about the target audience and they might be best reached this way, but our funding doesn't allow us to do that. And so sometimes we have to tweak, but I always try to think just about that one group and be very narrow when we get started. And then sometimes you can move out a little bit, but again, really just get in there honing, either starting with the message, or if someone says to you, hey, we got to reach all the paramedics in the state about X, well, there's your message. There's the paramedics, and what do you know about them? So it's hard to have a one size fits all, but we need to really look around. I'm not great with social media, but I bet there's a lot of directors or EMTs in your state who may be. And so sometimes we have more than one message one message that we get out several avenues. So again, each time is just a little bit different. And I believe, I'll look at the chat box, but I hope that you guys help each other in the chat box also about what you have found that has worked for you.